Hey, I need to talk to you about something important. Come here for a minute. I was called by the second generation president, Mr. Turner, and headed to his office. It was probably about my contract, which had expired. Since your contract is up, we're done here. Pack up your stuff and don't ever contact me again, alright? There were many things we needed to discuss, like the systems used in the company or my severance pay. But Mr. Turner just smirked as he showed me the contract. I was shocked to find that the severance pay clause had been removed from the contract. What? What is this? You didn't even bother to check the contract, thinking it was the same as before, right? That's on you. What? It's true I had signed the contract extending it until the end of the year, and that was after he became the new president. Since the contract looked almost identical to the previous ones, I hadn't read through every line. I never imagined they would remove the severance pay clause. What is going on here? Why would I waste money on severance for someone like you? If you had any brains, you'd have figured that out by now. I felt anger boiling up from deep inside, and I struggled to keep my emotions in check. Sure, it's my fault for not reading the contract carefully. I had no intention of arguing about that. But what I couldn't forgive was how Mr. Turner was betraying everything the previous president stood for. Listen, someone like you is worth nothing. No severance after your contract ends. Good riddance. The moment I heard those words, I knew I was completely done with him. I headed straight to grab my laptop. My name is Kyle, and I currently work as a software engineer. It's been 10 years since I started in this industry right after graduating high school. Becoming an engineer wasn't an easy journey. Thank you for having me from today. Oh, you're Kyle, right? I've heard about you. Let's work well together. My parents divorced when I was in middle school, and I was raised by my single mother after that. Since my father had controlled all the finances, he took everything with him when he left. Life after the divorce was extremely hard. Even so, my mother worked tirelessly to support me, and I managed to graduate from middle school. In high school, I worked part-time jobs to cover my own tuition, doing everything I could to ease my mom's burden. But eventually, my mother fell ill and could no longer work. That's when I gave up on college and decided to get a job instead. Since you're a beginner, you need to learn the basics first. There's a lot to remember, like how to write efficient code. Work hard, and you'll get responsibilities soon. Yes, sir. Under the guidance of my senior, Mark, I gradually gained the knowledge and experience I needed as an engineer. But I was the only one in the company who didn't have a college degree. While everyone else joined as college graduates, I was just a high school grad working part-time. Even though we were aiming for the same goal, we were starting from very different places. Because of my position, I was never trusted with major tasks. Even though skill was part of the evaluation, my lack of a college degree was a huge obstacle. I had known ever since they told me to work towards becoming a full-time employee, but it was still tough to keep going. You can definitely do this. I know the company's trust is hard to feel, but I believe in you. Keep pushing. Yes. I'll keep at it. After that, I worked harder than ever to succeed as an engineer. Even when I got home, I studied online materials daily. After a year, I had more knowledge than the new college graduates. Let me introduce you. This is Timothy from the sales department. Nice to meet you. He and I go way back from college. We've been friends for a long time. Pleasure to meet you. I had been delivering solid results at the company, but my lack of a degree still held me back in many ways. In spite of that, Mark was the only one who really looked out for me, and he even introduced me to Timothy, a guy in sales. While that introduction didn't directly impact my work, the fact that Mark would vouch for me like that made me feel trusted. I was grateful for that. Thank you for today. Please invite me out again sometime. After that, Timothy grew fond of me too, and we became close enough that he'd take me out for drinks every now and then. As I grew as an engineer, I was eventually put in charge of a small project. I'm going to gain more experience and eventually become the leader of a major project. That was the current goal. One day after work, Timothy invited me out for drinks again. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm probably going to get really busy soon, so I won't be able to go drinking for a while. Busy? Is there a new project coming up? Not exactly a new project. I'm going independent. I'm starting my own company. It's still a ways off, though. Timothy said this with a big smile, and I was completely shocked because I hadn't heard anything about it before. I knew he was good at his job. Despite his relatively young age, he had a decent position and lived quite comfortably. It means he was probably making good money. But he never showed me any indication that he'd go independent. You're going independent. Yeah. I owe a lot to this company for nurturing me and treating me well, so I didn't want to leave on bad terms. That's why I've been talking with them carefully to ensure a smooth departure. I see. That's incredible. I've never thought about going independent, so I'm both surprised and impressed. Timothy wasn't just thinking about himself, he was also considering the company that had supported him. Sure, that might be expected of any professional. But seeing how he handled everything with care and avoided creating conflict around him was probably the secret to his success. After that, Timothy shared more details about his plans. He wanted to use the connections he'd built to launch an online retail business. That sounds amazing. Best of luck to you. But I've still got a long way to go. There's so much I need to do before I'm ready. I'm planning to work on it alone for the first year after I leave the company, as it's going to take that long to prepare. Couldn't you set things up to run smoothly and then leave the company later? The work I'm in charge of right now isn't something I can juggle with running a business on the side. Plus, it wouldn't be respectful to the company. It was his sincerity that made him so respected and liked by everyone around him. That's what I genuinely felt. We celebrated that night with a big party and had a blast. But after hearing Timothy's story, I too started seriously thinking about going independent. I'd already been wanting to put myself in an environment where I could rely solely on my own skills, and Timothy's story inspired me further. I knew I still had a ways to go before being fully recognized as an engineer. But the desire to test my abilities had been ignited. I can handle projects on my own that are at the same level as the ones I'm working on now. I plan to take on freelance work, build up my portfolio, and eventually establish my own software development company. After consulting with Mark and my superiors, I decided to leave the company at the end of the month. It was a bold move, and I didn't have a solid plan in place. But I felt ready to give it my all. 1 year later, I received an offer from Timothy to work with him. It was an exciting offer, but I found myself in a difficult position. The truth was, I had just successfully gone freelance and started my own company. While it was a wonderful opportunity, I couldn't just go work for someone else now. Thank you for the kind offer. But actually, I just founded my own company. It's still just me, but it's a software development firm. Wow, really? That's incredible. Congratulations. Timothy's reaction was enthusiastic, but I knew it probably wasn't the answer he had been hoping for. He probably expected me to eagerly accept his offer to work at his company, but instead, he was genuinely happy for me. Well then, I guess I should just have your company subcontract the work. It's a software development business, right? Ha! I need you to build our system. Can I count on you? I was originally hoping you'd work as our in-house engineer. But since you're running your own company, we can subcontract you instead. Before I officially founded my company, I had gotten some freelance gigs, but this was by far the biggest project I'd ever been offered. Developing a web application for an e-commerce company. I would be responsible for building everything from the ground up. Even though my company didn't have much of a track record yet, Timothy trusted me. I was determined to give it my all to meet these expectations. I truly felt that from the bottom of my heart. Our relationship continued after that, and I worked on building and maintaining systems, as well as training his engineering team. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, 30 years passed, and Timothy retired as he grew older. The new president was Mr. Turner, who had been serving as the vice president for a few years. Hey, got a minute? Yes? You're on contract, right? Once I take over, I'm planning to cut all the contract employees. So, you might want to start looking for another job. I was suddenly called in and told this. By now, my own company had grown quite a bit, so I could manage even without the work from Timothy's company. Ideally, I'd focus entirely on my business, but I continued working there as an external contractor because of my relationship with Timothy. So, while returning to my own company full-time wouldn't be an issue, the abruptness of the conversation took me by surprise. What do you mean by this? It's pretty sudden. I mean, I don't have money to waste on someone like you. We don't need useless people just playing around on their computers. Mr. Turner said this to my face, without hesitation. I wasn't sure whether it was a cost-cutting move or if he just personally disliked me. But ever since he became vice president, it was clear that he only cared about people's academic backgrounds. He judged everyone's work performance based solely on their educational qualifications. Does this have something to do with the fact that I didn't graduate from college? Wow, you figured it out. Even with a high school diploma, you could grasp that much, huh? I sighed, confirming what I had already suspected. There are people with all kinds of educational backgrounds at this company. Some graduated from lower-ranked universities, some from vocational schools, and others like me only have a high school diploma. There were even a few who were middle school graduates. Timothy had always hired people without regard for their education. In today's world, it's possible to acquire various skills on your own. A college degree doesn't determine a person's worth. But Mr. Turner didn't understand that, and he revered higher education. It probably had something to do with his own academic achievements, but I couldn't help but sigh again. Are you firing me right now? No, I'm not that heartless. I'll extend your contract until the end of the year. Okay. After that, make sure you found yourself another job. Was this his way of being kind? Still, I had given 30 years to this company. Timothy always put the company's growth first, so its scale was much larger than mine. But I had supported the business while managing my own company. It might sound arrogant, but I had done it for Timothy, providing my time and expertise because of everything he had done for me. And now, without knowing any of that, Mr. Turner was coldly cutting me loose. I let out a heavy sigh, realizing that complaining wouldn't change anything, and decided to do my best until my contract ended. However, hey, why don't you go clean the bathroom or something? What? Bathroom cleaning? That's about all someone as useless as you can do, right? It's an order from the president, so get to it. Not just me, but all the employees who were on the chopping block were subjected to harassment from Mr. Turner. Forced to do tasks outside of our job scope like cleaning the bathrooms, excessive nitpicking on our work, and constant lectures. It was endless. Even in that environment, I continued to do the work I was given. Sure, I could have quit right away, but I didn't want to cause trouble for the other employees or the company. Thank you for your help today. Not at all. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. Will do. I kept working until the end of the year, and finally, my last day came. Hey! I need to talk to you about something. Come here for a minute. I was called in by Mr. Turner and headed to his office. It was probably about the expiration of my contract. Your contract is up, so we're done here. Pack up your stuff and don't ever contact me again. His high-handed attitude left me completely stunned. What on earth was Mr. Turner thinking? There were still things we needed to discuss, like severance pay and the system I worked on. It couldn't just end with, goodbye. What are you talking about? We need to discuss severance and the system. You're not getting a single cent of severance. You useless fool, stop trying to leech off this company's resources. I wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. Timothy had promised me that I would receive severance pay equivalent to that of a regular employee. It should have been clearly stated in the contract. I wasn't in need of the money, but it was a gesture of appreciation from Timothy. It should be in the contract. The part about severance pay. Are you talking about this contract? With a smirk, Mr. Turner pulled out my contract. It looked like the same one I'd always signed. If you're really getting severance, show me where it says that. He spoke confidently. I took the contract from him and searched for the clause. It had always been written at the very end, so I immediately flipped to the last page, but there was no mention of severance pay. I checked the other pages as well, but it was nowhere to be found. I even pulled up the copy I had saved as a PDF on my phone. To my shock, the severance clause wasn't in my copy either. This meant that Mr. Turner hadn't forged the document. What is going on? You thought it was the same as before and didn't bother to check, huh? That's on you. What? It's true I had signed the contract extending it until the end of the year, and that was after he became the new president. Since it looked almost identical to the previous contracts, I hadn't read through every line. I never imagined they would have removed the severance clause. What is the meaning of this? You really think we'd waste money on severance for someone like you? If you had any brains, you'd have figured that out by now. Anger surged from the depths of my gut, and I had to fight to keep my emotions in check. Yes, it was my fault for not reading the entire contract. I wasn't going to argue about that. But what I couldn't forgive was how Mr. Turner so easily betrayed the principles that Timothy had stood for. Listen, someone like you is worth nothing. No severance after your contract ends. Good riddance. At that moment, I completely lost my temper. I never imagined he was this self-serving, but it showed me exactly the kind of president he was. Understood. Thank you for everything up until now. I said that much, bowed, and returned to my desk. Of course, I wasn't going to let this slide. People who don't act fairly deserve the same treatment in return. I packed my things, said my goodbyes to my colleagues, and left the company. Once I got home, I opened my laptop and got to work on something. The next day, I got a call from Mr. Turner. "Hey, what the hell is going on? What do you mean? Calling me so early in the morning and yelling like that? Where are your manners? You disabled all the systems we use." That's what's going on. I'd never heard him scream like that before. But I wasn't surprised. I didn't expect him to contact me so soon, but I knew this was coming. Of course, I did. "You didn't renew my contract." "Huh? Contract? Wow, you really don't know anything, do you? And you're the president?" I couldn't help but smirk as I said that. Mr. Turner, with his inflated pride, was now screaming at me even louder because of my attitude. "Do you even know what I'm doing? I don't know what you're talking about. You were always just messing around on the computer. So why would you have the authority to disable the system? Nobody else knew about this. How could this be happening?" Clearly, Mr. Turner had no idea what I'd been doing for the company. He must have been told everything when he took over from Timothy. Either he completely forgot, or he just brushed it off without paying attention. Either way, now he was panicking because the company's system was down. The systems affected included employee management tools and accounting software. We have tons of remote workers, and we've got a pile of invoices coming in at the end of the month. This is going to be a disaster. Say something. As the CEO of the company that developed the system, I'm willing to renegotiate the contract. We could even switch to a buyout model instead of a usage fee like before. But, of course, you'll have to apologize on your knees first." "What?" I said it clearly. I knew this wasn't going to end without consequences. I had already informed the management and accounting teams, but if this got back to Timothy, my reputation could take a hit. Not renewing the contract and restricting access to the system was perfectly within my rights. But I couldn't help wondering if Timothy would be disappointed in me. That thought lingered. Still, I couldn't forgive what Mr. Turner had done. "You've gone too far. I'm coming over right now, so get to the office." I didn't intend to keep the system offline forever, so I headed to the company later that afternoon. "Hey, I've been waiting for you. Let's head to the president's office." To my surprise, it was Timothy waiting for me in the lobby. He must have heard about the situation and rushed over to the company. I had my reasons, but I wasn't sure how much Timothy knew or what he was thinking. We both stayed silent as we made our way to the president's office. "Excuse me." Timothy knocked and entered the president's office, where Mr. Turner stood, rigid and imposing. "I sincerely apologize. I deeply regret the disrespectful way you were treated, and I'd like to ask for your forgiveness." To my astonishment, Timothy was the one apologizing to me. Wait a second. What's going on? Why is Timothy apologizing? Mr. Turner was desperate to stop him from bowing his head. It was clear that Mr. Turner had thought Timothy would be on his side, angry with me, and backing him up. However, the reality was quite the opposite. "Timothy, please, lift your head. You. Stop acting like that. You should be apologizing with him. What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" In all my 40 years of knowing Timothy, I had never seen him this angry. The intensity of his fury left Mr. Turner visibly shaken. The atmosphere in the room instantly became tense. "Don't make me angrier than I already am. Who do you think is responsible for this mess?" "Well, you see." Trying to force things through with an authoritarian attitude without taking responsibility for your actions. I never thought you were this kind of person. If I had known, I never would have appointed you as president. But before anything else, you need to apologize." Timothy spoke in a low, menacing tone, and Mr. Turner, visibly deflated, turned to me and bowed his head. "What is it?" "First of all, I'm sorry about the contract." Mr. Turner mumbled an apology for his actions. Perhaps he thought I was upset about not receiving the severance, but at that moment, I was more curious about Timothy's reaction. How was Timothy going to handle this? "So, how do you plan to take responsibility for your actions? You're not a child, and certainly not an ordinary employee. You've caused damage to this company. How do you intend to make amends?" Timothy had completely locked his sights on Mr. Turner, who had gone pale. He was likely searching for the right answer, but nothing seemed to come to mind. That made sense because he'd always operated with a self-centered mindset, crushing anything he didn't like with force. It was hard to imagine someone like him offering the sincerity Timothy was expecting. "We could renegotiate a new contract. I'll be sure to offer a higher fee, and the usage cost will be more than before." "That's not what I'm talking about." Timothy's voice echoed throughout the president's office, and Mr. Turner's face contorted in fear. He had clearly stepped on a landmine and realized too late what a mistake he'd made. Timothy was truly furious now. "If you don't understand the gravity of your actions, let me make it clear. You're fired. I'm not leaving you in charge of this company any longer." "What? You've got to be joking, right? Do you think this is the time for jokes? If you honestly believe that, your head must be in the clouds. I heard you look down on those who are high school graduates, but it seems your brain is smaller than a microbe's." Timothy's sharp words left Mr. Turner completely speechless. Even I hadn't expected the word fire to come out of Timothy's mouth. But it was proof of just how serious Timothy was about this. "What you did is utterly unforgivable. You used your position as president to wield your power, not for the company's benefit, but to satisfy your own selfish desires. Someone like that has no business running a company." "Please, wait. Can't you reconsider? You can't just fire me like this. I admit what I did was a grave mistake, but you understand it, don't you? What you did is unforgivable, and I have no intention of forgiving you. Take responsibility and leave this company." As Timothy said this, Mr. Turner collapsed to his knees. Despite his usual domineering attitude, he began sobbing loudly and prostrating himself before Timothy. "Please, I beg you. Can't you forgive me? Do you think crying and begging for forgiveness will make everything right? Take responsibility for your actions like a man." Even though Mr. Turner continued to apologize and plead, Timothy didn't budge. After that, Timothy led me out of the president's office and into a nearby meeting room. "I'm truly sorry about everything that happened. I was the one who made him president, so this is partly my responsibility as well. I never imagined he would turn out to be like this. I'm really sorry." Timothy had already apologized to me when we entered the president's office, and I never blamed him for any of this. There was no need for an apology, but this was Timothy's way of showing sincerity. "You don't need to apologize, Timothy. You're not at fault here. You've helped me more than you know. Without you, this company wouldn't be what it is today. It was unforgivable to treat someone like you, an indispensable part of the company, with such disrespect." Timothy spoke with tears welling up in his eyes as he expressed his gratitude to me. You built our system for a fraction of the market price, and you let us use it for less than 1/10 of the usual cost. When the company grew, you dedicated your time to training our engineering team. You even helped with the programming classes we started recently. For 30 years, this company thrived because you were there. Timothy. Even during tough times for the business, or when I was dealing with personal issues, you were always there to support me. It's because of your presence that we've come this far. Thank you, truly. Timothy grasped my hand firmly, looking me in the eye as he spoke. Seeing him like that brought tears to my eyes as well. But I owed so much to Timothy too. You taught me how to run a business and introduced me to clients. I'm just as indebted to you. I don't think I could ever repay all you've done for me. Hearing this, Timothy smiled and replied, "Hearing that makes everything I've done feel worthwhile. Thank you, truly. And I'm sorry again for everything that happened. I know I'm in no position to ask, but could we continue working together?" Though Timothy seemed apologetic, I already had my answer. Of course. I'm looking forward to working with you again. We shook hands firmly, reaffirming our partnership. In the end, Mr. Turner was fired and forced out of the company. Timothy's company was large, and word about Mr. Turner spread quickly, both inside and outside the industry. It seemed he couldn't find a new job. Having lost his job, he was abandoned by his family, and now lives alone in obscurity. Most of the salary he had earned over the years had been squandered, and whatever little savings he had left were taken by his ex-wife for child support. It was a fitting end for someone who had caused so much harm, but it was clear he was living a miserable life. As for me, I've been focusing on running my own company while maintaining my strong friendship with Timothy. Timothy has returned to his role as president and is now dedicated to mentoring the next company leader. We've brought in some great talent. They're interested in the president position, so I'm taking my time to develop them, he told me. That's wonderful. I'd love to learn more from you again. I, too, have been thinking that it might soon be time to pass my company on to someone else. I'll need to learn those skills from Timothy when the time comes. Meeting Timothy was one of the most significant events of my life. Of course, I can't say that everything in life has been easy. There have been struggles, challenges, and moments where I felt cornered emotionally. But every time, I would look to Timothy and think, I want to work as hard as he does. And Timothy, in turn, felt the same way about me. Life is unpredictable, and we often don't realize how much we are helping others. That's why I believe it's important to have confidence in what we're doing now. When you join hands with those who cherish you and, in turn, cherish them as well. If you live wholeheartedly, focusing on what's in front of you, a better tomorrow and future will surely await. I've taken this lesson to heart, and I plan to live my life by it moving forward.